That's a lot.
On my mother's side, she had 4 older brothers, and a sister. One of the brothers and the sister were twins. And then there was my mother. And then when they came to the States, Grandma had 3 more children, and she had Aunt Florence, Uncle Louie, and Uncle Sam. And they were the last 3 born. And they were born in the United States. And when Mother married Daddy, all of them nearly, well, they were all fairly close together after Grandpa came back. My grandma came back with the little kids over here. And only, I don't remember on her side how many were in the service, but one of my cousins married a guy, and he was in a submarine. And they were going to Japan. And after the submarine left the United States, they never heard from that group again. Never heard from the boat or anything. And he was married to one of my younger cousins. I mean, she was like 21 or 2. And that was just so sad. No one ever heard again. And that's the only ones I can remember on that side, because the ones that were married and had kids, their kids were too young to go, and I don't remember any others in the service. So I don't know whether it was just they didn't want to volunteer and they weren't needed, or they were too young. That's all I can think of about that.
What, the Depression?
Yeah, the Great Depression, Grandma. I know you don't remember much, but I remember just
Well,
some stories about like ways you...
I was born in 24, so that was in 29, and all I remember is just people talking about not having things, and at the time, I don't remember what my dad was doing, but I know when I was 5, he built our house on Claremont, which was the one that I keep saying was over near White Rock Lake, and we lived there a long time, and when we moved from there, we moved out on Inwood, where he had built a restaurant. They called it a beer garden. Roosevelt Gardens. Everything was Roosevelt. He was a big Democrat. So the president, he named the beer garden after the president. Anyway, then he added a house onto it for us, because we lived way over by White Rock, and that was a pretty big distance to go morning and night. So, and they didn't have gas out there, like to cook with. And he put in some portable type stoves, and you had to pour the gasoline in a little tank for them to work. And so when they, one night on a Saturday night when they were really busy, and I was spending the night over in the White Rock area with a friend that lived on the next street from where our house was, and her dad was a policeman, and he wouldn't let me just spend the night with anybody. I think that was the only person who'd let me spend the night with. And so I was over there, and I called him for some reason, and I couldn't get an answer, and I knew that wasn't right, but I couldn't figure out what was wrong, because they would normally answer if I called. And it was a Saturday night, like I say, and they were busy, and they were putting more oil or gasoline in those stoves, and they blew up and just started burning. The building was all frame, and our house burned the house, and I was just a kid, so I was really upset, because I had a bunch of money, 50 cents and quarters that I had saved, and I had them under the rug in the bedroom. I don't know what I thought was going to happen to them, but anyway, I was so upset because my money was burning. Anyway, that was a bad experience, but I think I was about 10 when that happened. And then after that, we moved back to our house out by White Rock, and Daddy bought a place on Knox Street, part of a building. He didn't buy it, he rented it. And it was a 2-story where he was, and he had a restaurant downstairs, and in the daytime upstairs they had well, I don't know what to call it except the slang name. It was a boogie joint where they raced, they had horse races. And he had a lot of rich people from Highland Park used to come over there. And I guess he served lunch. I don't even remember that. But I'm assuming for people to come in there and sit for 2 or 3 hours, they probably had to have some. And his restaurant was downstairs. This was in the upstairs. And so he had that for a long time, and he had the restaurant. And then I don't know whether he lost his lease or something, but then he moved over on Wycliffe and Oak Lawn. That was a popular spot in Oak Lawn. And opened up the same restaurant, but over there. So, and his business improved all the time. He had a lot. It was really good. He made a lot of money in that place, and then he got tired of it. He was getting older, and so he took in a man as a partner who had a young son, like 22 or something, and he wanted the son to run it with Daddy. And so of course, Daddy didn't like anything the kid did, And after a while, he got tired, but he knew he was getting too old to run it by himself, so he sold it to them. And then that was when, after that, my grandmother got sick in New Orleans, and Mother wanted to go to see her, so we all went, because he wasn't working. And so we went to New Orleans, and we got down there. It was about a long block away from the racetrack. It was a whole block of little duplexes, and Grandma had one of those duplexes, and she had both sides. But anyway, the racetrack brought a lot of business to that grocery store. We'd send him up there to get fruit or to get bread or something. And this one day, he came home and said, "Well, we're moving to New Orleans." And we all said, "Why?" He said, "Because I bought the grocery store." It was a supermarket. He said, "Because I bought the supermarket up on the corner." And we all just about died. But anyway, I was in college at the time. I was at SMU. And at mid-semester, we moved down there. And I was going to go to Sophie Newcomb. But when we got there, they only had semester changes. And where I was at SMU, they'd gone to trimester because they had military in the school. It was called ASTP, it was Army something, and then they also had Navy. So when I got over to New Orleans, they had the same thing in part of Tulane, but they didn't have it at Newcomb because there weren't girls in service. So when I got there and I went over to, the lady at Newcomb told me just to go on over to Tulane. I probably could get in the College of Commerce because that was co-ed. And so when we got over there, they had everything I needed but biology. I'd taken the first half and needed the second half. So when they said, "Well, maybe we can get permission for you to go to the College of Science," or whatever they called it, and take your biology and then take the rest of your courses, Spanish and accounting, and over at the College of Commerce. So that's what I did. But the sad part was I was the only girl in a class of 90, and most of them were all Army and Navy. And that was the only place I could get my biology. So I went on and signed up for it and was without a textbook for 6 weeks because the government had taken all the textbooks for their guys. And I just had to borrow a book from time. Nobody had a book to give me. And so for the first 6 weeks, of course, I didn't make a very good grade, but I was having fun.
This was before you met Grandpa Mike, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this was during the war.
Yeah.
And anyway,
having fun. I bet you were having fun.
Was Dad paying for your school?
What?
Was your dad paying for your school?
My dad was paying, yeah. Oh, I didn't get any Army
because
stuff.
If he was from the old world,
yeah,
for a girl to go to college must have been
I was the
kind
first
of
one
different.
in the family that, yeah.
But he was okay with it.
Oh, yeah. He wanted me to be educated. Yeah. And I wanted to go because you know, I've been a pretty good student.
Was
And,
education really important to him?
what?
Was education really
Uh-huh.
important to him?
Yeah. Well, you know, he and Mother, neither one. Mother went to school till about the 4th grade, but then Grandma had the last 3 kids, and she couldn't do all the work that had to be. They were on a farm then. She couldn't do all the work, like all the cooking and all the cleaning for 9 kids. And Mother's job, her sister, the one that had a twin, she got married. And when she got married, that meant Mother was the oldest girl. So a lot of the helping with Grandma had to be put off on her. So when she was in the 6th grade, she had to quit school. You know, back in those days, they weren't going to come get you and say you had to go to school. It was just not being done. So that's as far as she got to go in school. And Daddy didn't get to go at all when he came over because he was 14, and they, you know, there was no rules about you had to go to school.
So what did everyone do during World War II? All our
What
relatives, like what jobs
Well,
did they have?
Sal,
Yeah.
you know, and little Vic,
Yeah.
the first little Vic, got killed,
Yeah.
and he, and then Aunt Louise and Uncle Vic had another son later, and they named him Charles,
Okay, right.
after the oldest brother.
Okay.
And then he, when he went to college, he went to Notre Dame.
Okay.
When he got out and came back home, Uncle Vic had a huge restaurant downtown, did a lot of business. We were really high-class restaurant, lunch and dinner place. And little Vic went to work for him, and everybody called him Little Vic. His name was Charles, but they called him Little Vic. And so later on in life, he went and had his name changed to Vic. So, but that was all. The brothers, you know, the 3 brothers went to the war.
Yeah.
Vic, Brazil, and Charlie.
Okay.
And then on Mother's side, I don't remember about her brothers because I think the older ones were on the older side.
Yeah.
They weren't real old at all, but
Yeah.
they weren't drafting or calling in anybody. They were
Right.
taking all the young guys, as far as I know. But
So Charlie, were they all Air Force?
who?
Was Charlie, the 3 brothers, were they on your dad's side? Were they in the Air Force? Which one was a gunner?
Daddy was in a tank.
Okay.
My brother was a gunner.
Your brother was a gunner. Wasn't there that story where the pilot, something happened and...
Yeah, that was when the pilot got
Tell
shot.
that story. Kevin hasn't heard
I-
that before.
We started
I
with
told
that.
Oh, you did? Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that.
Yeah, we told that.
Was your mom, did she work or no?
My mother?
Yeah.
Well, when Daddy had the drugstore at the market, she worked a little bit, but after she had us, she didn't work.
Hmm.
So she stayed home, and he worked. And let's see, well, there were only 2 of us, Sal and me.
Yeah.
And then when he came back from the service, he went to college 1 year, but he really wasn't a student, but he just wasn't interested in going to college. So that's when he went to television school and then worked in the restaurant.
Hmm.
And I mean, he had it made. I mean, he could work at the restaurant for Daddy owned a 4-plex across the street from the restaurant. It was 4 apartments in one building. And Sal lived over there on the bottom floor, and he had 2 kids. He had one before he moved in over there, and then he had the other one after they were in. And they lived there for a long time, and Daddy had bought a house out on Inwood. A small home, but it was nice. And Sal and Al and the 2 kids moved out there to get out of the apartment. And then when I got married, and we went to A&M for that 1 semester, he had 2, but when we got married, it was starting of the last semester. And then I was going to tell you about that. Y'all
He must have been working a lot.
Who, me?
No, your dad. to be at the
Yeah,
restaurant, to afford a fourplex, and to afford all
Well,
this real estate.
Oh yeah, he
Sounds
was
like a really hard worker.
yeah, he'd made good money, and yeah, he
Taught himself English.
he was always big in property.
Mhm.
So later in life, when he quit having the restaurant, and after they moved back from New Orleans, and then he sold out the restaurant, he just kind of dabbled in some real estate, and he made a couple of really good buys, and he bought some land up at Lake Dallas, and it was right on. It was called Highway 77, but it's now I-35, and he found this piece of property. It was kind of a half moon shape, but it was right on that highway, which, like I say, is now Interstate 35. And the guy that made a contract with him, he told him he'd buy it for $50,000 if it went wet, if they could get liquor on it, because he owned a lot of liquor stores in Dallas. And he thought that would be a good way, because that area up in there had been dry. And if they got it to go wet, it would be an ideal spot, especially for people leaving Dallas going to Denton, because Denton was dry. And it was Dallas, and then about 10 miles it was that piece of property, and then about another 25 miles it was Denton. So anyway, people going home to Denton used to. Anyway, the guy took the property and paid Daddy the $50,000, and then while he was dabbling around up there, he bought another piece of property on the highway down a little bit. It was a building on it, and then he bought some lots right next to a school. He bought 10 lots, I think, and it was on a street, and there was a school there and a high school, and he sold those lots. I don't know whether he sold them individually, but he kept two, the very last two, and that was about a block and a half from the lake, and still have one of those lots. Anyway, he was going to build on those two lots, and then he never did. And it was business. He could have built some kinds of business. There was some restrictions, but he didn't sell them for a long time. And then he kept one. I think he sold one and kept one. And like I say, we still have that. But
What's on there now?
nothing. Just a blank lot.
Is there stuff next to it?
A guy has a home and a barber shop, and then next to the barber shop, I think it's something else, and across the street is a hardware store. It's about a block on both sides of the street. But it's been very slow to develop in there. It's
What part of town?
what?
What part of town?
It's in Lake Dallas. Yeah. It's just a little town on the side of that highway, and it's not very big, but it does have a couple of schools. And it may be someday, probably way after I'm gone, it'll be worth anything. But
How has Dallas changed over time? You've seen it.
How does Dallas
How has
change?
Dallas changed
Oh.
over time?
well, when I was little and when we built our first house and Daddy was working at the market, there was a corner down there that's kind of a wedge like this, and there was a watering thing for horses out in the middle of
Wow.
the street. Yeah. When I was little, our milkman had a horse and wagon. And then the ice man, because everybody had ice boxes, he had an old truck. And when he'd come and stop and see if anybody wanted ice, he had it in huge blocks, and then he'd cut it in about a 25-pound piece. And we'd all go stand by his truck so he'd give us a little piece of ice. It's hard to believe that was in my lifetime.
Do you remember getting your first TV?
Yes, we were living in that fourplex, and we'd been married not very long, maybe a year and a half. And Mike's daddy was with General Electric a long time, and he had some good friends in General Electric, and especially in New York. The guy that was kind of head of the GE business up there, was in charge of refrigerators and just about anything you wanted. He was a friend of Mr. Carney's, grandpa. And he whenever they wanted anything or needed a refrigerator or something, they'd call him and he'd give it to them at rock bottom price, you know, because he'd worked for them for 25 years. And so, I'm going to tell you something funny about him, and now I've lost it.
TV.
Yeah. Well, when TVs came out, he may have called Grandpa and said, "Hey, Bill, do you want a TV?" I know that, or Grandpa called him, and they sent a TV, and it was about 2 or 2.5 feet wide, and about 3 feet tall, and all the rest was mechanics. It had a 9-inch screen right over here.
Wow.
Yeah. And so they got that first TV that they ever made. And
First one. That's cool.
well, first
Model.
type
Yeah.
model, yeah.
That's cool.
Well, then another one came out with a little bit bigger screen, and the guy called him and he said he wanted one. So when they got the second TV with a little bit bigger screen, they gave us a 9-inch screen. We had it in that apartment. So that was our first TV, but we were young. I mean, I had to be maybe 23 or 4, not very old. But yeah, that was neat. We were one of the few people that our age that had a TV.
How
And
much do you think it cost? Like
back
a
then?
week's worth of wages, or 2 weeks worth of wages,
I
or
don't know. It's
I
probably
bet they were
a couple
really
$100.
expensive.
I don't remember. But you know, things back then compared to now, the prices are, even though $200 for an entertainment thing might seem like a lot of money to us then, it seems like nothing now. But
yeah, that's why it's better to think in terms of like what you made in a week
yeah,
and what would it cost.
well, we didn't pay for that one, so you know. And at that time, Mike and his father had become the distributor for some windows. And so I don't know. Oh, that's pretty neat. I don't know. You know, I can't remember what money they made or anything.
Yeah.
But after the war, when some of my neighbors around who had never been to college or had been there one semester, got married, decided to go back to college, and they had 3 people in their carpool, and they kept trying to find a 4th person, and finally they just kept on me about going with them, and I thought, oh well, I'll try to do it. You know, Mike was in school, and Cindy was in school, and so we took Tuesday, Thursday classes, and they were an hour and a half, so you could take 2 classes and get 3 hours of credit each, you know. I don't think that worked. Well, maybe it did. Anyway, that's what I did for several years. But I decided to become a teacher instead of being a business major. So it meant I had to go back and take some other courses. So I did that. I think when I graduated, I had like 160 hours or something.
Why did you decide to become a teacher?
Oh, I always kind of like to show people stuff and do stuff. I don't know. And I thought it would be, I would always be off when the kids would be off.
Yeah.
So anyway, I did get my degree. I did get a job in DISD, and I got a job about about 4 miles away from here, which was very close. And the first job he offered me was at White Rock, and that would have been a nice big ride. See, Cindy was about 13 then, and I didn't want to be too far from home because she would probably get home before I did. So anyway, after I was teaching a while, Cindy got a driver's license, and she started taking me to work. And then, because she got out earlier than I did. And so I taught her to cook, so if she got out earlier than me, she could come home and start dinner. And Mike was traveling, so she and I ate out a couple of nights a week, and then we cooked a couple, you know. And she kept the car. She was happy, and after a while, she started getting off a couple of days a week at 2 o'clock. They had some kind of program where if you wanted to get out and get a little part-time job, you'd have time to do that and not get behind in your homework or whatever. Can you think of anything else?
I have a question. Who was it that made the soup for the whole neighborhood and would go around? I think you've told me this. It was like,
No, Cindy started a school.
no, this was like a long time ago. One of the relatives would go around